I want to begin this morning by having you listen to something. It's a voicemail that I received recently, and I just want you to see if you can figure out what it's all about. So here we go.
Hi, this is Jerry calling from Trucks Industries. We're calling to go over some great items that we have that you may qualify for, and if so, it could possibly be of some great benefit to you. If you're interested in hearing more about these and other new ideas, please call back. We can discuss further. Have a great day.
All right. So, can anybody tell me what that person was calling about? Because after listening to it about a dozen times, I still have no idea. I have a basic idea that this person was a telemarketer. I can gauge that much. And I have a good sense that this person was trying to sell me something. But I have no idea what they were trying to sell me. I have no idea what company they work for. At one point they said they wanted to sell me some items. At another point they said they wanted to sell me some ideas. So I have no idea. This person was totally unclear. And because they were unclear, I was not interested. Clarity is an incredibly important thing. You know, over the past couple of weeks, we've been in this series of sermons called Storytelling, where we've been talking about the practice and the importance of personal evangelism, of sharing your story with other people, of inviting them to church, and sharing what God's done in your life. And all of this has been in preparation for next week, our big day, when we want to see what can happen, what God could do if we all invited our friends to church on the same day, what that might look like and what God could do through that. And so that means that because that's just 1 week away, a lot of you might be spending this week inviting some people to church, or maybe even you'll have an opportunity to share your story with somebody over the course of this next week. And so because this is my last chance to really talk to you about this subject, before you go off and you do that, and before we all come together for our big day, I wanted to leave you with some final ideas that can help you, above all things, to be clear. You see, a lack of clarity is one of the biggest obstacles that can get in the way of our being able to share our story with other people or invite them to church, of having any effectiveness in that. Take this telemarketer, for example. You know, he could have been selling something that I totally wanted, that I would have gotten completely excited about. He may have been selling, a free trip to Europe or a lifetime supply of hair gel, which at my rate will probably be about 1 year. But he may have been selling something absolutely great, but because I had no idea what he was talking about, because he was not clear, I was not interested. And we don't want that to happen when we share our story with other people. We don't want to lose that opportunity because we're just not clear. So this morning, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 5 things that you need to know in order to be clear. 5 things you need to know in order to have the clearest message possible, so that when you share your story with someone else, when you invite them to church, you will be able to be as effective as you can possibly be. These are 5 things that might seem like common sense in some ways, but in other ways, I think they might open your eyes to some new things. And so that's what we're going to look at this morning. That's going to be our focus. And before we jump into it, what I want you to do is I want you to flip over to the back of your bulletin. And on the back, you'll see this section that I've created for you called Notes. And I'm going to be giving you a lot of information this morning, a lot of things that you might want to know and remember. Now, if you don't write anything down, you might remember a couple of things, maybe a couple of the key points. But if you write it down, you have a whole lot better chance of being able to remember all of it and being able to put it into practice. And it also helps you follow along as we go through today. And so these are all in order. I'll give them to you as we go throughout. You won't have to search for them. They'll be very easy to find. But these are the key points that you'll want to remember as you walk away from this sermon. And so let me give you the first one right now. These 5 things you need to know in order to be clear. The first thing that you need to know, number 1, is you need to know your story. Now, this might seem like an obvious thing. You might think, well, of course, if we're storytelling, we have to know our story. But this is a key thing, that if we don't do it right, it could ruin the whole thing. When I think of sharing your story for the first time with somebody, I kind of create an analogy of like cutting a watermelon for the first time. You know, a lot of us have never shared our story before. We've never invited somebody to church, and so this is new territory for us. And there's a lot of things we want to consider that we just don't know about, things that we need to prepare for. And the same would be true if you were cutting a watermelon for the first time. If you'd never cut a watermelon, there'd be some things you needed to prepare and plan and know before you jumped right in. And so the first thing that you would need to know is you need to know your story. You would need to know, why are you here at this watermelon right now? Why are you planning to cut this? Are you cutting it up for a huge party of people? Or maybe have you just had some wonderful life-changing experiences with other produce and you think watermelon is next on your list? What is your reason for coming to this watermelon and cutting it up? And then the other thing you want to know is you want to know something about watermelon. You know, the way you cut a watermelon is different than how you cut an apple. It's different than how you cut a pear or a banana. And so you want to be prepared for that. You want to have some knowledge about what you're about to do. Well, the same thing is true when it comes to sharing our story. You know, when we share our story, the first thing that we want to know is our story. We want to know that story inside and out. We want to be able to share it with other people. We want to know, why did we come here to this moment? Why are we inviting this person to church? What has God done in our lives that is so great that we would want to tell somebody else about that and invite them to come be a part of it? Not only would we want to know that, but we would want to know that story inside and out. We would want to know every detail of it. It wouldn't do us any benefit to know about other people's stories. It wouldn't do us any benefit to know the biography of Bozo the Clown. It wouldn't do us any benefit to know all sorts of other useless information like current slang words. I learned a current slang word that I think is really cool. How many of you know the word deuces? Anybody know what that means? And it is not the number 2. All right? So the word deuces is what you would say if you were walking out. You kind of hold 2 fingers up like a peace sign and you just say deuces instead of goodbye. So as you all leave here today, I'm going to be at the back of the congregation. I'll be like, the Lord bless you and keep you, and deuces as you walk out. Probably not. But even though I know that, and even though I feel a lot cooler because I know these current slang words, doesn't do me any good if I'm sharing my story. What I need to know is my story, inside and out. And the Bible tells us this. The Bible tells us that we need to know our story. If you'll read the underlined words with me, this is a passage from Peter, one of Jesus' disciples. And this is what he says. He says, and if someone what? Asks you about your Christian hope, always be what? Be ready to explain it. This is one of your fill-ins if you want to fill that in. If someone asks you about your Christian hope, always be ready to explain it. Always be ready to share your story. If somebody asks you the question, why do you go to church? Or why are you a Christian? Have an answer ready for those questions. Be prepared when they come to you. One of the great ways to think of this, the reason this is effective, and this is another fill-in. In order to be clear, we need to be ready. In order to be clear, you need to be ready. You need to be prepared. You need to have thought about these things beforehand. You need to have practiced your story. If I were to ask you right now to come up here and stand at this pulpit and tell the entire congregation the story of how you met your spouse and how the two of you fell in love, or maybe if you're not married, if I asked you to come up here and share your favorite high school memory or middle school memory, do you think you'd be able to do a really good job of it the first time? I know I wouldn't be able to do a good job of it because I haven't practiced it. I haven't prepared it. Even though it's something that's part of my life, it's a story that I experienced, it's something I know inside and out. Because I haven't prepared it, because I haven't practiced it, I'm not ready to tell it. And so if I were to tell you that story, there'd probably be a lot of details I left out, maybe some extra details that had no impact on the story that just made it boring that I would tell you. I'd probably go back and forth, forgetting things here and there, and it just wouldn't be a clear story. Unless you are a natural storyteller, you have to be prepared. And so, you need to be ready in order to be clear. And so the first thing that you need to do if you're going to share your story with other people is you need to know your story. You need to know it inside and out so that you're ready to share it when that time comes. But there's more. The second thing that you need to know, and this is another fill-in for you, is not only do you need to know your story, but you need to know your destination. So let's come back to our friend the watermelon. If you come to this watermelon, you need to know, where's your destination? Where are you headed with this? You know, are you cutting this up just a big slice for yourself? Because that'll impact your approach, how you come at this watermelon. Or are you trying to serve 100 people out of this small little watermelon? Well, that would be a different approach. Maybe you want to do some art on this watermelon, do some carvings to inspire people. Well, that would be a different approach. The way you approach this watermelon is determined by the destination you're trying to reach. And the same thing is true when it comes to sharing our story with other people. You know, what you do and how you share things with them depends on the destination you're trying to reach. Sometimes your destination is going to be just inviting them to church. Other times, your destination is going to be sharing your story. It's all going to depend on the context, on what's going on in that conversation, and you need to know where you want to go. And the way that you can know your destination is this. This is another one of your fill-ins. Listen before you launch. Listen before you launch. People are telling us when they want to hear our stories. They're telling us when they want to be invited to church. But sometimes we have to listen to know when those moments are, to know when those opportunities are about to arise. Let me give you an example of how I learned this. When I was in seminary, one of the things that I was required to do was something called clinical pastoral education. And that basically meant I was a hospital chaplain for a summer. And I learned very quickly that this was going to be a trial by fire experience. I mean, I had little pastoral care experience, and they just kind of threw me in feet first. One of the things that they did is they gave you 2 sections of the hospital that you were the sole pastoral care provider for these areas. One of the sections that I got was the mother-baby wing. Let me tell you, one thing that I learned is after a woman has pushed 8 pounds of life out of her body, the last thing she wants to see is this face. So I didn't really do a whole lot of calls on the mother-baby section. But I had another area of the hospital. And that area was the surgical step down, where people had had surgery and they were just recovering before hopefully they were released. And this was a lot better section, and I got to do a lot more pastoral care in this area of the hospital. But it was difficult, because the key to it, my boss told me, was to listen. To walk into this room and listen, and people will tell you what's going on, what they need from you. So I'd walk into a room and somebody would tell me they'd have a gallbladder surgery that they were recovering from, and I'd walk out thinking, how can I help them with gallbladder surgery? What difference does that make? What can I offer this person? And after a while, what I eventually learned is what he was trying to tell me is that the key to listening is not just hearing what they say, but listening for the reason behind it. The key to listening isn't just hearing what the person's saying, but it's listening for the reason behind it. And so maybe I'd go into that room and the person would have had gallbladder surgery, but they'd also start talking about their kids. And I'd ask, have you seen your kids? And they'd say, no. And so I'd begin to realize that what they were really struggling with wasn't gallbladder surgery, but was this abandonment by their family as they were in the hospital. Or maybe another person would talk time and time again about their job. And it was just something that was on their mind. And so I'd ask them a little bit and find out that they were worried about losing their job because they were in the hospital. These were my moments for pastoral care. It wasn't just what they told me, but it was the reason behind it. And that same thing is going to be true when we try to share our story with other people. We don't just want to hear what people are saying, but we want to listen for the reasons behind it. Maybe somebody's telling you about something going on in their life. Their marriage is in trouble, or their kids are being, just kind of unruly, and they can't handle them. They don't know what to do. These are opportunities to share your story, to invite them to a place where God can create healing in a world of chaos. And so the key to it is listening. It's knowing your destination. And in order to do that, you need to listen before you launch. Now, the third thing that you need to know is not only your story and your destination, but your situation. When you come to a watermelon, not only do you want to know where you're trying to go with it and what you're trying to cut and all that stuff, but you want to know a little bit about that watermelon. You want to look at it and say to yourself, is this ripe or not? You want to see if there are any markings on it where it's been injured, or if there are any holes where worms have gone into it. You want to kind of have a good gauge on what's going on with that watermelon. And the same is true as you approach somebody and want to share your story. You want to know the situation. And there's 3 questions I think you need to ask yourself. These are each fill-ins. The first question you want to ask yourself is, what is the person going through right now? What's going on in their life? What maybe are they facing? Because that can impact how you share your story. If they say that they're going through marriage trouble, that's a way to connect with them and share your story and help them to see maybe if you had those same troubles, how God impacted your life. Maybe they're looking for purpose, and you can talk about how your church is a place where you found purpose and where others find purpose. And maybe this is a way to connect with them. But the first thing you want to listen for is what is the person going through? And how can you connect with that? The second thing you want to ask is, do you need to find a private place? Do you need to find a better location? Maybe you're just in public, and this isn't something they're comfortable talking about in public. So you want to go maybe just a place that works for them. Maybe a coffee shop is a place where they're comfortable, or heading to one of your houses to talk about it. But no, do you need to find a better location, a private place to discuss? And the last thing, and this is the most important thing you need to ask yourself, is this the right time? Is this the right opportunity to share this? We could have the greatest story in the world and it could do amazing things, but if we share it at the wrong moment, maybe we share it with somebody who's not ready to hear our story, or maybe we share it too late after that moment has passed, then we can lose that wonderful opportunity. And so we need to ask ourselves, is this the right time? I want to show you a video clip real quick of somebody who kind of asks at the wrong time. And this person isn't sharing their story, but they're about to ask somebody out on a date. And I want you to see how the wrong timing kind of impacts this person.
So just try the velvet. I don't like to necessarily touch things. I'm just shopping. Oh no, it's fine. Here, what about the raspberry one? It's really kind of festive. It's got a lot of purple. No.
Hey, how's it going? Good. Can I talk to you for a second in private?
I don't think so.
Yeah, just take a second.
Okay.
Just for a minute,
I really
please. I wanted to talk to you in private because I wanted to ask you out on a date.
No.
Was that no to talking to me in private, or was that no to the date?
Both.
All right, so talk about your bad timing. So what happened in that moment? He went into this room and he asked this woman who was trying to sell a purse, talking to another customer, had her mind totally somewhere else, if she wanted to go out on a date. And because he chose the wrong time, he flopped. He failed. Now, who knows? Maybe if he'd come 15 minutes later, it might have been the perfect time. She wouldn't have been distracted. I doubt it, but maybe he would have had a shot. He would have had a shot. But the key is that you want to know what is the right time. When you're sharing your story with someone, you want to know, is this the moment that I need to share this? Are they busy? Are they thinking about other things? Am I just doing it for myself? Or is this the moment when they can really hear this? When I can really share this? Is it the right time? The next thing you want to know, if you're going to share your story and be clear about it, is know what the right tools are. The right tools. If I come up to this watermelon with a spoon, it's going to be a long, frustrating day of trying to chop up this watermelon. That's just not going to work. So I need to know what the right tool is. And the right tool, of course, is a knife. But what kind of knife? If I'm going to try to do fruit carvings, well, then I need probably a small little paring knife to be able to do some designs on this watermelon. If I want to do regular cutting, maybe to feed a bunch of people, then I probably want my knife of choice, which is a nice, long, serrated knife. And that'll get through this watermelon nice and cleanly. But you need to know what the right tools are. And the same thing is true when we are sharing our story with other people. We need to know what the right tools are. Sometimes we need to go beyond the obvious and connect with other senses for people. And so here are 3 tools that you might want to use. These are fill-ins. The first tool, the most important tool to use, is your story. We talked about this earlier. This is the most effective tool you can have because this is how God connected with your life. And so if you can use that effectively, if you know it well, inside and out, that can be your best tool. But there are other tools as well. Another tool that we often overlook is Scripture. A lot of times I find that when I share my story, the words that I've got in my mind just don't feel like the right words. Sometimes they feel cliche or cheesy. I feel like I've heard them from other people, and they're not my words. And so sometimes I find that the best thing I can do is go to Scripture and use the Bible's words instead of my own. And here's an example. If I wanted to tell somebody about how Jesus is just the center of my life and I find nothing more important in my life than Him, one of the passages that I love to use is Philippians 3:8. Where it says, I consider everything else a loss compared to knowing Jesus Christ. And I mean, I can't say that better myself. You know, everything else in my life seems like a loss compared to how amazing Jesus is. Scripture's words are better than mine. And so if we can use that, that can be a great tool for us. But the last tool I think you want to use are visuals. You know, we want to connect with people's different senses. Sometimes the sense of smell is one we want to connect with. Not just hearing, but maybe smell or touch or taste or even visuals. If I wanted to tell somebody about my relationship with Leanne and our marriage and why I think it's successful, or just maybe the things that I think are successful in any marriage, one of the tools that I would use would be my wedding band. And there's two reasons. One, because my wedding band is a symbol of our love, and it's a symbol of our marriage. But it's also more than that. You see, inside of my wedding band are written 3 Hebrew words in Leanne's handwriting. It's Raya, Dod, and Ahava. And each of these are words for love. They're all unique, different kinds of love, but every single one of these forms of love is essential to a good marriage. And so if I'm trying to tell somebody about the importance of a healthy marriage and what makes a great marriage, this is a great tool to tell them about these forms of love. And so if I can use this visual, it can connect so much better than just my voice. And what I want you to think about is, as you share your story, what are some visuals that you could use? Maybe you've got, a poem that really connected with you and helped you to find out about your relationship with Christ and understand it better. You could share that with them. Maybe you've got a little bottle of sand and water that helps you to remember your baptism. That's a great visual. Whatever you've got, if you can connect with those other senses, you can be even more effective. And that's what we're looking for. We're trying to be as effective as possible when sharing our story with other people. And so we can use tools, and one of those is visuals. The last thing that you want to know, if you're going to try to be clear and sharing your story, is you need to know your fears and you need to face them. As I come to this watermelon, I might have some things that I'm afraid of. Maybe I'm afraid of making a mess. And so if I want to face that fear, I put a plate down here. Maybe you would put some towels around it. Another fear I might have is if I'm trying to serve a bunch of people, I might not cut enough pieces. So maybe I could draw some lines on it and make sure that I've got enough pieces. If you were trying to make a fancy design and you were afraid of messing up, maybe you could practice beforehand, before you came here. But in the end, what you want to do is you want to know your fears, and then you want to face them. You want to get in there, and you want to actually do the work and face the fears. One of my fears is the knife isn't long enough. And then you produce something beautiful. And that same thing is true when we're sharing our story with other people. We want to know our fears and we want to face them. And the approach I think you can take to this, and this is your last fill-in, is what I call the confess and address approach. The first thing you want to do is you want to confess your fears. Are you afraid of being asked, why are you a Christian? Why do you go to church? Are you afraid of maybe messing up and stumbling over your words? Are you afraid of rejection, which is what a lot of people mentioned and we talked about last week? What are you afraid of? Confess that fear, face that fear, and then address it. Figure out how can you respond and overcome it. What things can you do to practice and prepare for that fear? So if your fear is maybe not having a good answer when somebody asks you why do you go to church, practice that beforehand. Come up with that answer before you ever get asked the question. Maybe you're afraid that you're going to stumble over your words. Practice your story before you give it to somebody. I mean, every time I come up here on Sunday, I've practiced at least 3 or 4 times the message I'm going to give to you because I want to have it down in my mind. Maybe you're afraid of rejection. Maybe what you need to do is prepare yourself that this is part of the process, that sometimes we don't always succeed. But if you prepare yourself for that, those moments where you don't succeed will be a lot softer. And the victories will be a lot sweeter. In the end, what you want to do is you want to get yourself as ready as possible because God has given you a gift to share with other people. I mean, that's what I truly think this is, that we have been given a gift to share with other people. The reason we've been talking about storytelling for the past couple of weeks isn't just to make our church bigger. It's not just to feel good about ourselves when we see a bunch of people in the pews. Those might be byproducts, but they're definitely not the reason. The reason we do it is because God has given us an amazing gift in Jesus Christ. Someone who has taken away the guilt and the shame and the pain in our lives. Somebody who allows us to connect with God in a way that no one else can. And who gives us a purpose that we can't find anywhere else. This is a gift that we have that's too good to keep to ourselves. And so what God wants us to do is to share that with others and to tell our story. And we want to do that as well as we possibly can. And to do it, we need to be clear. So may you remember the things that we've talked about this morning. May you remember the things that you need to know in order to be clear when sharing your story. And may you put them into practice this week. On the back of your connection card, if you want to look at it one more time, you'll see the ways to respond. And there's some different ways that you can respond today by, saying that you're planning on inviting a friend to church on Sunday and checking that off. And that's what you're going to do over the course of this next week. Or maybe you want to plan to clarify your story this week. That's how you're going to respond to this message. Maybe you want to be a greeter next week and help people once they come into the church. Or you want to write notes to people once they leave. Maybe God has touched your heart today and you've decided that you actually want to give your life over to Him and to begin that story of your own. Whatever is going on in your life, may you see what God has done. And may you realize how special that is. And may you share it with others. Let's pray.